I need you. All right, here I am. I think that we're up and running. Let's try this again. Check our audio, see if we're up. Tech person. I want to say that I can see my audio spiking now, so that's normally a good sign. If you can hear the door slamming in our office here. All right, cool. Sorry about that. I do live streaming in the metaverse, which is where I was last Wednesday night for VNN Live, and so I'm sure it has to do with some kind of setting there. But anyway, you missed our intro. VNN director, lead journalist Brittany Harlow here. Um, VNN Live is a segment that we try to hold every Wednesday night, whether it's here in our studio or in the metaverse. We go to a couple different metaverses, virtual reality, Neos, and um, Horizon Worlds from Meta. But obviously, right now we are here in the flesh. Um, I put out a schedule at the end of every month that I've started doing, which basically kind of talks about the different YouTube VNN lives that we're going to be having. And tonight is about April Wilkens. So uh, I do like to start these as soon as we clear up audio issues. Just kidding. We haven't had audio issues in a very long time, and I should have tested it before I went on tonight, but I didn't. I've had a long day, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna go live, and it's gonna be okay. And it wasn't. So, shows me. Anyway, I want you to be a part of the conversation. If you would like to drop us a comment in on YouTube or send me an email, bharlow@verifiednews.network, that we can kind of follow along in real time here and answer your questions if you have any. If you happen to be watching this um, after the fact, I still want to hear from you. Still comment. I check them regularly. I get notified. Still email. I'd love to uh, find out what we're doing right, what we're doing not right, and what you think about this coverage that we've been doing, especially in regards to what we're talking about tonight. I do like to introduce our news coverage with a glimpse of our app. We have had a lot of great stories this month from our VNN journalists and other contributors. Um, Rachel in Michigan has been covering a lot of great stories in her local community. Mainly, the coolest story that I've seen come out from her and interact here. And by clicking on her name in our app at app.verifiednews.network, you're able to see what stories she's contributed. I don't know. There was a graduation shooting and a um, deadly tornado, but there also was a uh, pet adoption story that she did that was really great. Let me see if this will pull it up. She's posted a lot of stories recently, but basically about how a local humane society there is going to be uh, translating their adoption forms and other resources into Spanish. So that is something that you may not think about as predominantly or only English speaker. Is that a lot of people in America, in North America, don't speak English as their language or primary language or even at all. And so this is a great story about really opening up that something that we probably take for granted um, is that possibility to do that easily, adopt a pet. Couple stories that I've been working on this month. There is I did another weather story. I love reporting on weather, especially here in Oklahoma where it's so wild and crazy. And then, of course, a really great story um, in the Muskogee Nation about them expanding their mental health services to include in the future an inpatient substance abuse treatment facility, which is super needed. I'm really excited to be able to share that news and information because that's been something that I've been inquiring about for a pretty long time. So that is our app. And again, you can find that at app.verifiednews.network. As promised, this is April Wilkens updates. And I stay pretty busy. I have a lot of news projects that I'm passionate about that I'm working on here in Oklahoma, where I'm based, and where VNN was founded. Um, in addition to news stories and investigations, we have a lot of projects with collaborators that we have going on. In like IndieGraph, we've been working on an indie growth program with them to improve our news product and uh, grow our subscribers and just do news better. And so it's been a really great program that we've been doing with them that we work on every week. We were recently, if you checked it out, saw it on our social media, that we have uh, just been accepted into a trusting news program that will allow us to, or that is allowing us to connect with our community members in the Muskogee Nation to find out more about people who have low trust in news and how to work better together and to better serve them. So that's really exciting. But I say all this while we're talking about a night of April Wilkens coverage um, because I'm trying to convey like how much stuff that I have going on as a journalist, as someone who's running VNN, managing editor, doing our advertising, our social media, a lot of stuff that I'm doing. Um, to say that April Wilkens is always on the top of my mind and it's something that I'm always thinking about throughout the week and when I'm doing coverage on other stories. And so, if you're not familiar with the April Wilkens case, she is a woman who we've done multiple stories on in the past and who no one else, for the most part, in the state of Oklahoma, present day, will give coverage to her story. She killed her abuser, terrorizer, rapist, uh, more than 20 years ago, and she's still serving a life sentence for killing this man who beat and terrorized her and did these horrible things to her over a span of several months. Um, and he was the son of a local millionaire here in Tulsa and a big advertiser. And that's the big reason of why you never see coverage, because especially here in Tulsa, he's still a big advertiser. That company that the son, his family, is still Don Carlton Honda, still one of the biggest advertisers of local media, still kills the story year after year of getting her story out there. But I am obviously not a big company that depends on advertising. A lot of the work that I do is volunteer work, and we do a lot of different projects and we do a lot of different news coverage in different specific areas that is funded, but news like April Wilkens is majority not funded. And so we depend on donations from uh, our viewers. We depend on community support. Anyone who wants to pitch in to help get her story told, we're always appreciative and accepting of those kind of contributions because, again, we're the only news organization in the entire state of Oklahoma that's reporting on this tragic case. And so, like I said, we've done a few stories on her. And I'm going to go back into our app for a second to show you again. App.verifiednews.network is how you can get there. And April Wilkens is her name. And so we've done 3 stories on her so far. The one I pulled up originally. This one is part of a series called April Story, in which we're working on the next one soon. Um, But I kind of hit a wall because, I had this great coverage plan for when she gets a parole hearing this year. And, the steps to like really kind of swarm coverage and really push her story across the state. But then they didn't even give her a parole hearing this year. The parole board voted um, 3 no and only 1 in favor of her getting a parole hearing when she's gotten parole hearings in the past. So that is something that we highlighted, the fact that the DA sent a protest letter even this year, more than 20 years later, um, saying that she needed to remain in prison for a lot longer amount of time because she was a threat to the public. Now, again, the only person April Wilkens has ever, uh, I would not even say committed a crime against, because when you kill someone as they're attacking you, um, that to me is not really a crime. That is kind of a kill or killed or be killed scenario, which there's no real good choice there. You're either going to die or you're going to become a killer. But anyway, that's the only person that she ever uh, killed, ever hurt in that way, through that night of her, killing her abuser so that she herself would not be brutalized and killed. Um, and so the idea that the DA is still protesting it here in Tulsa more than 20 years later, saying that she's a threat. I mean, I do feel like she is a strong woman that could possibly be deemed a threat to rapists who were trying to attack her. But that is the only valid claim, I would say, that is, as opposed to being a threat to the general public. I don't see that, because the only person that she ever harmed was someone who was attacking her, and who had terrorized her and brutalized her. So that to me uh, is just one big problem in a string of many, many problems regarding this case. And so that really, the fact that she did not get paroled this year really kind of blew my mind and surprised a lot of people. And it's kind of like, and even still, no news organizations reported on it. The fact that she does not even get a parole hearing this year, and she had in years past. And so, again, she was sentenced to life with parole, but it's kind of like, when is she going to get parole? You know, it's been she's serving her 25th year now for this crime, and so I hit a wall. I'm not gonna lie. I have one interview in the can, so to speak, with a lawmaker who's trying to change laws to, or even just start conversations about women who are battered and who suffer from this battered women syndrome, which is essentially somewhat of an insanity plea, right? That you're just so, your mind is so warped from being living in fear all of the time and being abused and having yourself be threatened and your life be threatened and your children be threatened, that um, that you are just really not thinking straight. And um, I would say that even if you didn't work going up against a millionaire family that had money to pay people off and totally control your life and take everything away from you and have so much money and so much power to be able to do that, it would still be a hard situation. But especially in April Wilkens' case, that she was a woman with nothing going up against a man who had everything. And so that's obviously why here she is still in prison. But the lack of media coverage to me has been really crazy. And I'm not really about that life of like, oh, don't step on my toes. Like, this is my story. I want as many people to tell the story as possible, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So, if you ever feel like getting involved, in addition to supporting our coverage, feel free to call your local news stations if you're here in Oklahoma and be like, hey, this is a case that deserves to be covered. Um, and maybe that, they will decide that humans are more important than money. Uh, Great news, though, uh, kind of like a shining light in all of this, even though my coverage has kind of hit a wall. I am getting some help, and there's some movement, which is breathing new life into what I'm trying to do uh, with our April Wilkens coverage, and what I'm hoping to tie into our next story that I'm hoping to put together next month is Oklahoma Appleseed, the Center for Law and Justice. They're launching this year, and I've been following them, Oklahoma Appleseed, on Instagram and Facebook, and they are officially like a part of this nationwide network. And they have said that they are going to be covering April Wilkens' case. And she's actually highlighted here on their website um, under criminalized survivorship. And they explain what that is, and it's basically when you criminalize survivors. She's basically being punished in prison for not dying, for fighting back, and so they are taking over helping her with this case. So I believe that they're working with her lawyer, and they're bringing a lot of attention. As you can see there, they're very familiar with the case. In 1998, she defended herself against a final attack from her abuser who stalked, raped, and terrorized her for years without police intervention. And so I'm really excited that they are taking up her case and using that, what it appears to be as like a cornerstone of their justice reform efforts. I want to say the person who runs the show here in Oklahoma for them is named Colleen McCarty. I talked to her last week, and I should be touching base with her probably in a week or two. And what I foresee happening there is I want to interview her and her work and what she hopes to accomplish, because not only is she going to be taking part in helping April Wilkens get out of prison, but they're also working to reform uh, the laws that keep women like her in prison. And so that is really important. And um, I am excited to be able to talk with her and find more about, this great organization, especially what it means for April's case, and um, include that with this lawmaker that I interviewed, and kind of what he's doing to essentially do the same thing as far as criminal justice reform, um, particularly pertaining to battered women syndrome, which still is not really recognized very much in Oklahoma's court system as a valid defense. And so I want to say that I've done a lot of work in this space for the last several months, and um, there is a lot of traditional thinking when it comes to women and crime, and how we treat women in the state of Oklahoma. And it's just not conducive to women, uh, female justice. Like, it's pretty wild that it's still believed that women should be put in the position of, not only be put in the position of kill or be killed, but it's like, be killed. Like, there, you will not kill. Like, this is not okay for you to defend yourself in that way. And there's a lot of blame put on the victims, as opposed to the perpetrators and the people who are committing the crimes that push victims to do these drastic measures to save themselves. And that's essentially kind of tying it back to that criminalized survivor, because, they're being pushed to the edge like that. And there's nothing being done about the people who are pushing them. And then that's not recognized that is a valid defense of, saving your own life. So I'm really excited to speak with Colleen soon. She has, I'm pretty sure, I caught her on the phone while she was traveling, but agreed to do a news interview with us so that we can do it with this next story. I had a couple more updates next. This petition is going around. It actually features VNN story. Why didn't she stay away? Part of that hashtag April story series that I mentioned before. You can look it up in our app, but this petition to commute the life sentence of April Wilkens is almost at 2,000 signatures. And so that's pretty awesome. I spoke with April's niece, Amanda, said that they had started a petition long ago, but it didn't really go anywhere. And so the fact that this petition is picking up steam, I'm going to be sharing it with our subsequent stories that we're going to be reporting on. Um, and so hopefully that'll get even more traction ahead of what I'm hoping will be the next step of filing for commutation, since it appears that, she's not going to be getting paroled anytime soon, especially she's only eligible for it every 3 years. And so at the very minimum, she won't even get a hearing for another 3 years. And so um, that is pretty terrible. I wanted to also point out our one of our projects that we're doing is called it's a learning series called From Addiction to Entrepreneurship. And so you might be wondering, well, what does this have to do with April Wilkens? Well, um, this whole series is about how grassroots movements within the entrepreneurship community are really what's helping people that are still struggling with addiction or other adversity. Because when you have a state that really doesn't um, have all of the resources that are necessary to, um, help people that have mental illness, to help people who are dealing with generational poverty, generational abuse, generational drug addiction. All of those problems feed into addiction in one way or another. Whether addiction's already been in your family, or you have your poverty leads that way, or really there's just so many avenues that lead to addiction here in Oklahoma, and there's not hardly enough resources to pull people out of that and get them back on the right path. And then for a lot of people, it's like, okay, yeah, I could go into recovery for addiction, but then what? Like, this is my life. This is all that I have. They don't have self-esteem. They don't have a lot of um, ideas of anything else that they could be doing. And what better way in the community that's been proven is seeing other people living their passions and having careers that they really enjoy, coming from that adversity, and being able to not only find a passion and find, you know, uh, a great life in recovery, but also to lift up others, and create jobs and hire people because they have that that real life empathy, of uh, kind of seeing it from that point of view, and they're more likely and oftentimes do hire people that are just as involved or who have been in recovery or are in recovery from addiction. And so this series focuses on those people that have gone from addiction to entrepreneurship and how they've done that. It'll also have support for people who want to recover and people who are in recovery and want to become entrepreneurs. And so uh, I say all this because it is important for um, people to really understand how people fall into addiction, whether it's generational or other, and how they kind of get sucked into that. And um, a lot of people, it's just like a vicious cycle. A lot of people who are in prison or in jail in the state of Oklahoma, and I mean, honestly, across the nation, are there because they have mental health issues or they have drug problems, which is a mental health issue. And that's something that, another thing that's going to be highlighted in this series is that drug addiction is not, always a choice. It's often not a choice. Like substance abuse disorders are mental illness disorders. They're not just, people who just don't want to quit. It literally is a mental illness. And that's something that is not known or really accepted. And we're having mental health experts, substance abuse experts there that will kind of talk about that, and maybe help community members understand that that is not, again, just a choice that people are making. Like that's a sickness that should be treated just like any other sickness that, there's not a lot of resources for. But anyway, I tie this all together because the problems of the state, um, a lack of resources for mental illness, resources, and the state's treatment of women and the justice system in particular are big roles. And again, uh, big stops, big um, parts, aspects, whatever you want to say, of this road that goes from addiction to entrepreneurship. And so, we don't just arrive on that road there. We want to really explain how people get to become addicted, how they fall so far, and that those stories are so important to understanding full circle, how people get to be that point so that they could eventually overcome it and eventually do great things for their community. And so we're going to be, uh, I've reached out to April in prison. We've talked. We used to talk every week, but as I mentioned, I got roped into other coverage and projects, and I haven't uh, talked to her as often. I still do message her probably, I would say, every couple of weeks. And I had mentioned to her that I remembered that she had done work as an entrepreneur. She had her own uh, business before. She went to prison. She mentioned that it was actually a way that Terry, um, the man she killed, controlled her, was through this business that she had, and that when she gets out, she would love to launch something based on what she used to do, which was prosthetics. And so just talking with her, and I feel like that would be a really great. She had plans. It's on her, her plan to work at Shebrews when she gets out, and that's where she would have a job, which is where our Tulsa event is going to be. And of course, the founder of Shebrews, Rhonda Bear, is an incredible woman who uh, was in trouble with the justice system, was addicted to drugs, and turned her life around to launch this amazing chain of coffee houses that employs justice involved women and helps get women out of that life and onto a better path. And so that is where we're going to be having our Tulsa event. And it kind of, again, all ties into um, this big whole mess of um, helping people who need it the most. And that is essentially why this whole series came about. And I'm really excited to be able to tie some April Wilkens coverage into that if possible. Um, and we'll just see. It depends on funding, of course, as always. I would love to do nothing but write about these important stories, but unfortunately, I have to do other things like paid work and fundraising efforts. And so I was able to raise some. And so there's definitely going to be some April Wilkens stories coming up very soon. Definitely at least one next month. And again, our event coming soon. So thank you guys very much for sticking with us through this VNN Live. Again, been a while since I saw you. I will make sure to check my mic like a good broadcaster before every show moving forward. Okay, love you guys. I'm going to sign off here with our end scene. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe, all of those amazing things to support us and what we're doing. And of course, I want to hear from you most importantly. Go ahead and email me or drop a comment, and I will take a look at it and I will respond to you. Thanks, guys.